Daniel Hannan, we are in Brussels. Thank you for having us with you here.
Great to have you.
The European Conservative and Reformist Group. What's your major concern nowadays regarding the future of Europe? You blog on this, you talk on this to people, but what's the most important concern that you have?
Well, we are facing imminent bankruptcy. It's not a theoretical concern now, it's practical. Most people in most of Europe are seeing a real decline in living standards. And my concern is that the EU is responding to this crisis by accelerating all of the policies that brought us to it. So we have a problem caused by excessive European integration, the inability to apply a single set of monetary policy to widely divergent countries. And their solution is more integration. You know, if monetary union wasn't enough, then let's have fiscal union, let's have a Euro bonds, a European finance minister. We have a problem of excessive debt, and their solution is more debt. And you know, this is giving more of the medicine that sickened the patient in the first place.
Some would say still that austerity measures are an attempt to reduce debts, though. Germany is pushing for that. How would you assess the recent response that we've noticed in France, for instance, in Spain?
Yeah.
The anti-austerity politicians like Hollande and the rest.
I mean, definitely governments, just like individuals, have to live within their means. You can't spend more than you earn, whether you are the French state or whether you are an individual. Not for very long. There comes a point when the money runs out, and that's the point that we've reached now. But I would say two things. First of all, people will accept austerity measures if they think that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
If they think that after years of austerity, they will get out of the problem that they're in. The trouble with being in the euro is that it shuts off the light at the end of the tunnel. You have the austerity stretching ahead forever without any likelihood of being able to get out of it by pricing your way back into the market and exporting your way to growth. The other thing I would say is this: countries, just like individuals, need to be given responsibility if you expect them to behave responsibly. You know, if you treat an entire electorate like a child, if you make them completely dependent on outside subventions, then they will behave like a child when those subventions are taken away. They will sulk, they'll protest the removal of privileges, they won't stop to say where's the money coming from. But if they are responsible for their own affairs, then electorates will behave responsibly.
We'll soon have more children of the revolution. You're also well known as an advocate of the idea of direct democracy. How is that idea, a very generous idea, not overlapping the notion of populism? Consulting the people is very good. However, how do we resist the temptation to...
Well, I have a lot of confidence in people. The more you trust people, the more you consult them, the more they exercise that function discreetly and maturely. The country in Europe which has the most direct democracy is, of course, Switzerland.
Yeah.
One thing that you notice about the Swiss is that because they are regularly voting on fiscal questions, it's virtually the only state in Europe where the average citizen has some idea of how much a government is spending and how much you have to cut here in order to pay for more there. And the result of this is that you don't have an enormously populist country. Switzerland is a very stable liberal democracy, but you do have small government, you have no economic crisis, which is astonishing when you think that it was a banking crisis that overtook Europe. You'd have thought Switzerland would be very exposed, but because they have low debt and low tax and low spending, they are not in the mess that most of the European Union is in. If people are regularly asked their opinion, you know, then it was the great economist Amartya Sen wrote that you shouldn't ask whether a nation is fit for democracy, it becomes fit through democracy. And Switzerland is a very, very good example where you trust people and you're repaid.
How far would you go with this idea? I mean, electronic votes, perhaps?
Look, I'm always and everywhere in favour of referendums, and I'm particularly in favour of local referendums. There are lots of things that can be decided at a municipal level that don't need to be decided at a national, let alone at a European level. Referendums are a very good way of reminding politicians that they work for the rest of us.
You are still very young conservative British politicians. What is the lesson that you've drawn from the life and the works of Margaret Thatcher?
Not to accept the permanence of decline. I mean, the amazing thing about Margaret, I'm just old enough, you're very flattering, but I'm just old enough to remember the atmosphere before she took over.
79.
Exactly, the late 70s. We had power cuts, we had food shortages, we had permanent strikes, double-digit inflation, and worse than any of that was the sense of inevitable decline. Everybody you spoke to thought that Britain was finished, our best days were past, and it was now irreversible. And she just refused to accept that narrative. She just wouldn't accept it, and she let loose the natural enterprise of free people, and she turned everything around. And it was a quite extraordinary achievement, the like of which I don't think we've seen in my country before or since. And so, however bad things get, never assume that it's forever. That's what, as Margaret Thatcher herself used to say, that's what they used to say about communism.
Right. What about the decline of Europe and the question of demographics? Are you more optimistic about this? Do you think there's a future there?
Yeah, I'm not as pessimistic as some people are. There are worse things in my overcrowded southeast of England constituency than a gentle decline in population back to early 20th century levels. We are hysterically crowded now. Of course, that creates problems. During the transition, there is a problem of a change in the worker to pensioner ratio. But eventually, first of all, that is a transitory problem. It will eventually settle down again within an overall new higher total with a smaller population, with a longer longevity. Secondly, it is my grandfather working in a coal mine in his 70s is not the same as me working in a computer screen in my 70s.
Technology has changed our lives. And
right. And I think one of the things that all Western countries have to accept is that we can't carry on with the retirement and pensions policies that were designed for a completely different society. This is a really good problem to have. We have the happy problem that people are living longer, healthier lives, and that, at 65 we are not broken old people. We can still enjoy life and do things, and that is a very good problem to have, but we do have to make the changes fiscally.
Dan and Hannan, the last question. Here at the Alliance of European Conservatives and Reformists, you work a lot with Eastern European young and senior politicians. What have you experienced in this interaction with the Eastern Europeans, Poles, Czechs, and so on?
I think it's an amazing thing to think of how civic society can be destroyed by the big state. I was present during the two great foundational moments of modern Romania. I was there during the siege of the TV station in Bucharest, and I was there again when the miners came to
Bucharest,
the student demonstrators away. And what was most striking about Romania then, 22 years ago, was the way in which one-party rule had taken over everything, from the village band to the Boy Scouts. There was no civic society, and it takes a generation to recreate the institutions of civic society. And to have that capital of trust again. So I think this generation of people in post-communist societies who have had that extraordinary task are now in a position to get the benefits. And there are benefits there to be had. Romania, like a lot of post-communist countries, has a basically educated workforce, but low costs and cheap exports. And so in a free market, it's potentially in a very, very strong position, provided that the civic institutions are there, that people have trust in integrity of property, in the integrity of the public process, and that's the job for this generation.
And I would add to that also the Eastern European countries, Romania included, have also, I think, moral examples from the past as how to resist and how to fight for freedom. People who suffered in the communist prisons are an example for the new generation. And perhaps these people who suffered and have been even martyrs of the good cause, they can inspire us.
And there was one other critical difference between the post-communist countries and the existing EU countries, which is that people understood the power and value of patriotism. Patriotism was allied to the crusade for freedom. When I was there in 1990, people were marching behind the flag with the symbol cut out of it.
Yeah.
And national independence to people meant personal liberty and representative rule. Okay? That's a very, very different thing from the prevailing view of the European Union, which is that patriotism is a dangerous force, it causes wars, it causes ethnic hatred. We know better, and you know better. You know, patriotism doesn't mean that you look down on another people. Patriotism, a genuine patriot, values the freedom of all countries and cheers the patriotism of all friendly peoples because it's what makes us behave unselfishly. Patriotism is what makes us recognize an obligation to the people around us.
One day we will sing together Rule Britannia. Now, thank you very much, and I wish you good luck with your job. Thank you so much.